see it change at the bottom. So right now the vehicles are heading 180 south. Well, they're moving at 180 to the south because that's the way the ship has been moving. We're now facing about the 210, which is the direction we'd like to go now, but there's not really much opportunity to just stop and head that direction. We could bring the ship direction to 210 or so, which is approximately upslope along here, and then we could, and maybe swing back to this feature if it's long and keeps running uphill. So it's up to you guys, but we don't have the ability to stay with it right now.
Okay, thank you, Jim. And I think what we want to do is to keep moving, because if we have to stop and it takes, say, an hour to reposition, then we're cutting into our dive. And so
right.
Because of the depth here, we only have about 3.5 hours total. So we want to make the most out of the time that we have. And obviously we understand if there's some really interesting material that we need to sample, we'll make adjustments accordingly, but our preference is to keep moving so that we don't have to stop and wait for 30 to 60 minutes to readjust our position.
Right. And as long as D2 is out ahead of the motion of Sirius, we've got time generally, because we're moving really quite slowly.
Mm-hmm.
We have time that we can stop and take a sample before we're getting into trouble.
So, yeah, we have 2 hours left of bottom time.
Deb was wondering if this, the rubble that we saw before, that rubble pile could have been formed as a downslope mass wasting when and then the fine sediments were swept away.
Waypoint 1, or is it more important to follow the,
maybe.
follow the slope?
Not sure. What surprised me about the close-up that we saw was that it looks like most of the material was carbonate.
Yeah, and there were lots of different sizes and shapes too.
Yeah,
but mostly small though, right? So smaller.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, now I'm going 180.
Watch these. This is Nav.
Go ahead, Nav.
Is it more important that we hit waypoints or just keep moving uphill? If you can see high pack, we're pretty close to waypoint 1, about 50 meters. So yeah, what direction would you like us to head? We can go to waypoint 1, then go up, or we can go kind of uphill.
Well, let me ask Jeff Drazen, and I'll get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Jeff, on the shore. Nav would like to know whether we want to
continue the waypoint, next waypoint.
Yeah, to the next waypoint, or you had mentioned trying to trace that that scree slope up to its origin. So what's your preference, sir?
Yeah, just a question. How far off is following that scree trail compared to going uphill to the next waypoint?
Would you prefer?
It's hard to tell exactly which direction we were headed for that.
See where the next waypoint is?
Right. Watch leave, Nav.
Yeah, it'd take us about 45 minutes to an hour to get to the top of that scree stuff he was talking about, probably.
But we do need to change direction.
Then we'd have to change direction. Is it more important to get to the second waypoint?
Well, but it's the same change.
All right.
I mean, waypoint 2 is southwest of us.
Okay, cool. So we'd be going along the same.
To get to the first waypoint, so we need to adjust anyway if we're going to.
Okay. So I'd say then just continue on that towards the next waypoint.
So it seems like we want to stop the ship motion that we're currently on.
Okay, I'll stop this current move, and then I'll make directions towards waypoint 2, which is a little bit more uphill.
Okay, great.
Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay, I'll do that.
Tim Shank, calling from the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution.
Hi, Bruce.
Guys are having a great dive.
Oh, thank you.
Tim Shank.
Tim Shank.
And, yeah, I've been watching Following the Dive from the beginning. I've been sort of thinking about the Lost City, what we've done over the years with ROVs and with Alvin. And, what you just
The bearing
encountered
to
was
waypoint
all
2 is
those
230.
pieces of little pieces of rock that look like carbonates. Was
call
really
it.
reminding me
Does
of when we
decimal
found
one sound good?
very deep, large areas,
Is that?
thickly
Will
deep,
we have time to get there?
with
that day?
pteropod shells.
Yeah, we have 2 hours left
At
of bomb
least a
time.
meter deep.
That'll get us there.
In large ponds like you
That'll
were
get
just
us
seeing with those
assuming
rocks.
we don't
Towards
At the base of the walls of Lost City.
Right.
100 meters is only going to get us. See where my cursor is?
Pond, if you went upslope,
That's
you'd
gonna take us
end up
an
being
hour.
on the large
Right.
carbonate chimneys that were 60 to 65 meters
just
tall.
Wondering
It's
if
a very reminiscent.
feel safe going a little
I would
faster.
call in and let you know, but
Okay.
the carbonates you're seeing
Josh's
here
face is saying no.
are
We'll start.
somewhat reminiscent
We'll get
of
the
the
direction
outer,
going where we want to go, and then
really
we can
the
see the
outer
reflection.
margins
Okay.
of Lost City. When you start getting closer, you see these
Bridge,
veins
RV nav.
where almost where the carbonate has come up
Can you go ahead
in
and
linear striations
stop the ship
through the
nice
rock.
and easy, and
Yeah.
then I'll give you a next
Follow
one.
those striations up, they lead you to the chimneys. So anyway, I think going upslope from here,
100
whether it's
meters,
waypoint 2 or this
230 degrees,
both are good ideas.
decimal 1 knots.
Thank you very much, Tim. Yeah, I
I'm
understand.
very much enjoying the dive.
I understand what you're saying. Thanks. So, folks at home, what you're hearing discussed is the general morphology around the base of the Lost City carbonate chimneys that were discovered on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. And so what happens is that they grow on cliff faces, on exposed mantle rock, peridotite, on faults that offset the central spreading axes of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge at that position. And what happens is the chimneys grow as a result of fluids coming out of the peridotitic rock that's exposed there, the mantle rock, and
Feel me to turn to the right?
there's a lot of earthquake activity there, so sometimes a whole chimney will fall off and you get a big pile of chunks of it deposited at the base of a large collection of these beautiful, huge chimney structures. So if the steep part at the end of this dive that we saw at the beginning when we were looking at the topography is indicative of fluids coming out of a the topography is indicative of fluids coming out of a fairly steep cliff, there may be a cluster of those kinds of chimneys. I won't say there will be because you can never tell when you're down here, but
was, 230
if we could
degrees.
follow that scree slope up, we would be able perhaps to see where they came from.
The ship is just starting to
So
move,
that's what we're
looking
trying to
at
do.
20 minutes until
It'll
you
take
start
us a little
moving
bit to
that
get
way, I
into
bet.
position.
So our fellow explorers, both the science community and our explorers who are taking part by watching these amazing images and taking part in this dive, we're really excited to have you all on board with us and as part of our exploration team. For some of you, it's getting to be quite late. Like my family and friends and colleagues over on the East Coast, it's what time is it? 11:20 p.m. So we're really delighted that you share our interest and enthusiasm. It's pretty exciting for us out here, and I'm sure that you folks on shore are also equally excited, especially considering how deep we are, 5,965 meters deep. Our temperature now is about 9 degrees C.
Time change?
Yep.
It's actually only 10:20, not 11:20.
Oh, okay.
It's an hour earlier.
Okay. And Tara, was that you in New Jersey?
It was.
Okay. And that's where my family is.
Well, there's still a lot of the small white carbonate pebbles on the seafloor.
So is there some kind of a size category that takes you from sediment to pebbles to cobble to boulders? Or is it more arbitrary? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, geologists arbitrarily
have decided.
Assign.
Okay.
Those
so what
terms.
are these things that we're seeing here? Would they be cobble, rubble?
These would be pebble to cobble size.
Yeah, see those laser dots in the middle of the screen? Those are 10 centimeters apart. Okay, so
about 4 inches.
Okay, so cobble, rubble, cobble. What's rubble? What's cobble?
Well, a pebble would be something that's on the order of, almost up to 7 or so centimeters. And once you get above that, you got a cobble up to maybe 15, 20 or so, and then beyond that, everything is a boulder.
I'm sure you'll have to correct me throughout this because I call things like rubble, cobble.
Well,
I know a boulder. Boulder is kind of easy.
Yeah.
Boulder is like big.
Really big.
Okay, so again, just a reminder to everyone participating on shore, and of course our science and ROV team here on the ship. Our priority for this dive is to basically head up slope and to see if we can find some potential seep sites. So I know we're all really excited about snapping photos on the side, which we can do. And of course, we always want to collect, but we need to understand those limitations because we have got to get further upslope so we can hopefully find some seep sites.
Would it make sense to turn the gain down on the...
And if anybody on shore sees a fish while we're doing any of these traverses, chime in. Although our videographer is likely to see it before anybody else does, because the screen over there is really high def.
Yeah, right. But if the priority is to cover ground rather than sampling, it's going to make
what
more
we're
sense to go
zooming in
faster.
on right now is definitely a piece of carbonate chimney. You can see an indentation in the top of the smaller one
on, that last move
on the lower part of the right-hand side of the screen. These things form basically a hole, and the carbonate forms around the opening of the seep where the water is coming out from depth.
Yep. Okay, so we have good images of these types of rocks. I think we can continue moving on.
But Levi, I'm comfortable with Richard sitting in if...
It's interesting that we're seeing ripple marks that indicate that current is going down the slope.
Yeah, downslope. So, Jeff Drazen, can you tell us a little bit about why you think this is such a great area to discover a potential new seep?
Hi. Yeah. Well, I mean, I do not study seeps and vents myself, but hearing from Patty and Tim Shank and others, it seems like we have all the signs that there are seeps upslope of us. So it definitely makes sense to switch our priorities a little bit for this dive, and I would say make the big priority trying to find said seep. It sounds from comments from Patty that the chances of that are best when we get up to the steep topography, potentially the source for all of these chunks of carbonate and that have been falling down slope here.
I think we're still moving south.
Yeah, this was always a possibility with this dive, but it seems like a very real one now with all the carbonate laying around.
Yeah.
Boy, I agree with you, Jeff. We see something in the water here. Oh, look at this little guy swimming along.
Busy.
More zoom if we...
No. Looks like that is an amphipod. Yeah, is it?
I think you're right.
Yep.
He's a baby.
An appetizer.
Right. Except that little tail he's got is pretty spiky.
These marine organisms eat some weird stuff. Now, when you've had shrimp with tail on, haven't you every now and then had a piece of that?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Crunchies.
Roughage.
What was that, Tara?
I said good spotting.
So these amphipods, like the one that we just saw there, are incredibly abundant in the deep ocean, and there are probably many more of them in the sediments or hiding in and amongst rocks all around us, and we just don't get the opportunity to see them. If we were to take a piece of dead fish or even some chicken from the galley and put it out on the seafloor here, probably within only a few minutes you would see amphipods swimming in from the entire neighborhood, and in the trenches, they can form masses, many thousands strong, and rapidly scavenge any sort of food that arrives on the seabed.
They're piranhas of the deep.
Okay, I was just going up to...
Do we have a scientific name for them?
No, they're very difficult to distinguish one from another. Even when you are looking at them with a microscope, you have to dissect their mouth parts. And I think Scott's on this call, so maybe he can tell us a bit more about identification of amphipods. But it's pretty tricky. It's probably in the group the Lysianacids.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, Jeff. Lysianacidae is a pretty large family of amphipods, and many of them are scavengers. So I just heard you refer to them as piranha, and that's not quite accurate because I think the ones we're talking about would go after dead fish and not live fish. But some of the species that are in the trenches include the genera Hyrandelia. There's something called Hyrandelia gigas, which, as Jeff just described, can respond to bait by the thousands. And when I was a graduate student, I took advantage of that and studied populations in the different trenches. Some differences, which suggested that perhaps these amphipod populations are restricted and isolated in each of the trenches to some extent, so they're not coming out from the bottom and moving around at the abyssal depths at 4,000 meters or so. There's a variety of other species. How you describe them, you basically have to dissect the mouth parts and some of the legs, and those are the key features. And so you have to get them under a microscope and be very delicate and be able to tease apart all the little legs that have been co-opted to use in feeding and identify them that way. So it's a fairly painstaking process.
That's why it's sometimes it's just so frustrating because there are some of these things that we know that we don't know what they are.
True.
And we have very limited capabilities to be able to. I mean, you have to decide: we're going to collect, we're going to beat feet up the slope. So in this particular case, we really need to to continue on this transect. But eventually, it's my dream that at some point, some sampling tools are developed that will enable us to identify some of these things in situ, right where they are, in place, without the need to actually collect. That doesn't exist right now, especially for organisms for which you have to, basically dissect them, tear them apart, and look at the different their different parts.
Bring it around.
For some of these crustaceans, it's like the number of hairs that are on the legs. And for sponges, of course, the same thing. We need to really take a small pice of it and examine the spicules.
We changed bearings.
Yeah, did I say across? I meant up.
And since then, we've moved.
It would be so exciting if we were lucky enough to come across, a dead fish or something that had sunk from the waters above, and would see these various scavengers feeding on it. And Jeff noted that, a lot of the times they're buried in the sediment. Presumably they're conserving energy or they're digesting their last meal. And one of the things I always found amazing was how rapidly organisms down here, animals down here, would respond once there is some food available, which tells you a little bit that there isn't that much food available, and when it is, they get after it quickly.
Okay.
fact, some physiology studies done by some colleagues have shown that it may be 3 months between feeding. They'll just engorge themselves so much that the body distends and they can't move anymore. So there's not much to do other than sit around in the sediment while they digest.
Oh, that's very cool, because I was wondering if they were just so full, they'd have a hard time maintaining their position in the water column and would be a prime target for something trying to eat them. So they can actually get into the sediment or hide in these little crevices.
Certainly, at least some species can do that. There's another one that's very common at abyssal depths throughout the world's ocean, Euretinis gryllus, and they, along with many other amphipods, have a lot of lipid in the body that they use for buoyancy. So they're also conserving energy by not constantly swimming, but instead floating to some extent.
This piece of carbonate that we're looking at in the bottom of the screen right now looks as if it has been partially dissolved. Carbonates will become dissolved as they get beneath the carbonate compensation depth.
So that cloud that you're seeing is this, really fine-grained sediment
that's kicked up.
Kicked up, yeah,
by the ROV's motion.
Yeah,
if it touches the seafloor a little bit,
or the thrusters.
Yeah.
So we had a discussion a few minutes ago about grain size and what's boulder, cobble, pebble, and granule. So they have them for gravel, sand, silt, and mud. And this is a scale that was developed by, well, I don't know if it's developed by Wentworth or that's what it's just called, in 1922. Yep. So geology is a very mature science.
Indeed it is.
Thanks, Deb, for sending that along. I'm going to have to save that. Let me bookmark it right now. We have really good ability to go on the internet.
Does seem like we're going so
send
fast.
emails to each other. We don't do
the ship's got
we don't do video
22
streaming
meters
of
left
movies
in its
though.
move. You comfortable adding a couple more meters to that?
Oh yeah.
Looks like it gets quite a bit
Hey, Patty,
deeper.
this is Tim again. I was just
100
curious
meters
about your comment
from the
about
end of
the
that. So
evolution
if I tack on 100, and we see what we
you
got there.
further than this,
Sound good?
that
we're
not
still doing
dissolved,
0.2, or?
Yeah.
that
You're
are much
comfortable with
younger
that?
than the surrounding oceanic
Cool.
crust here. I guess, could you speculate on maybe the age of some of these things, or the relative age of the crust versus the carbonate?
Yeah, sure, Tim. We have a variety of age dating now.
Pretty
Actually,
age,
Hong Pong Tong, who's visiting Honolulu right now, is from China, and she is working with me on some of the chimney samples that we've collected at the tops of the serpentinite mud volcanoes that exist here.
Good copy, Bridge.
We're getting a variety of ages.
Thank you, Bridge.
The youngest that we have seen using lead-210 dating is about 80 years, but clearly some of them are forming right now. Some of them are tens of thousands of years old. So the mud volcanoes themselves probably started erupting as soon as the Mariana Trench started subducting the Pacific Plate. So we've found serpentinite in drilling, deep ocean drilling cores at right above rocks of Eocene age. So these are extremely long-lived mud volcanoes, and the chimneys are going to form whenever these things are active. As the fluids rising from the downgoing plate, the Pacific Plate, interact with seawater as the fluids come out, then that's when the carbonate precipitates or forms orthogenically or in place, along with the expulsion of fluids from these great depths. And I'm just surprised that we're seeing so many chunks of carbonate. Yeah, there's got to be a source upslope that these are coming from. Some of these pieces are really big. And the largest active chimney that I've seen on one of the serpentinite seamounts at its summit is about a meter in diameter. Okay, here we come. This is a tongue again as we approach it of, it looks like the same sort of debris that we saw earlier. So this tongue on the right side of the screen, zooming into the center, looks like it may be made of the same broken up pieces of carbonate material. This is just such a surprise, Shirley.
Cool.
I know.
I
had no idea we were going to see something like this down here. It is totally amazing.
Two,
I am so
stoked. So,
Okay.
Yeah, just give you guys a heads up.
Big chunks and maybe a whole bunch of little chunks. All of this stuff looks like it fell off the scarp that we can see right in front of us in the sonar. So that's the way we're headed, folks.
It's called a talus pile.
Talus.
Talus. Talus pile.
Yeah, various terms for this. Talus or scree. Wow, look at the thing right in front of us. It's got sort of a white line all the way across it. And I'm wondering,
what the heck is that?
I'm wondering if that is a boulder that had a crack in it into which carbonate began to crystallize.
Wow.
Yeah, indeed. It's like it's a vein through this rock. And because it's so white, I would guess that it is carbonate. So this may, in fact, be a hydrated mantle rock, a hydrated peridotite that has been serpentinized, and it has a vein through it where carbonate has also crystallized.
We are at 5,949 meters in the Mariana Trench, a place that we've named the Hadal Ridge.
Right.
Hadal Ridge. And we're about a little over an hour into the dive. We have a little bit less than 2 hours. So this is
to find the source of the rocks we're looking at. Yeehaw. Beautiful imagery.
Yeah, really, really nice. Thank you.
Thank you, pilot.
And videographer.
And the videographer.
Who's that? Oh, it's Tara.
Seems like my swing arms are too far.
So as we go up slope, the hope is, of course, that we're going to be able to find the source of all this material that's just strewn all over the seafloor here.
This is not at all what I we was going to look like.
Me either.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
You know?
And that's the excitement of exploration.
Oh, man.
You get to discover things, learn more about this amazing area.
The only way we were able to, pick up stuff or discover even what was on the seafloor before, that cloud you're seeing is from our ROV as it maneuvered around. The props just kicked up some of the surface sediment, the fine material. But the only way that we were able to do anything like this when I was a grad student was to put down a dredge and scrape it along the seafloor for, maybe 50 meters or so.
And that didn't give you any idea of what it actually looked like. You just know what's there.
Not even that. You didn't actually know where the dredge picked up whatever it is you got.
Technology certainly has advanced.
Technology
since we were in grad school,
amazing. And there was no email to shore.
No, and so we're multitasking. We're doing part of the event log. We're taking separate notes so that we can write up some summaries later on. We have friends and family and colleagues who are emailing us. I haven't done Twitter or Facebook yet. I think that might be too much multitasking for me.
Well, not all at once.
No. Well, you never know.
Can you do Twitter and Facebook at once?
I have no idea.
You would be a marvel.
I have no idea. Why couldn't you?
Well, you could
two different devices.
Two different computers, right?
Yeah.
Signed on, left hand on Twitter, right hand on Facebook.
I think we're going to do a Twitter.
So it turns out that if you link the accounts, you can post on Twitter and they show up on Facebook. And I discovered that on the first dive of this expedition.
Oh, boy.
Oh, okay.
Now we're in trouble.
Are you tweeting now?
I am. I've been tweeting for these past 4 dives.
And this is Tara, right? Is that Tara?
This is Tara, yes.
Yeah.
So in that vein, we will actually have a tweet chat tomorrow. So right before the dive tomorrow morning, we are going to be answering questions here on the ship and basically taking anyone's questions via Twitter. At Ocean Explorer is our handle, and that's a great way. If you have any questions for any of our team on board, you can ask it and we'll get you an answer.
It'll be my first tweet. You might create a monster.
This is
Tara, you're going to have to tell me again how to link up Facebook and Twitter.
Beautiful,
isn't that cool?
manganese-coated rock. That's why it's black. But it is likely, and we never know until we break it open and actually can look inside, but it's likely to be a piece of the Earth's mantle.
So is it just coated, manganese coated? Or
yeah, it would be coated with manganese incrustation, or manganese oxide forms pretty readily on rocks that are exposed on the seafloor.
So for deep sea mining, would this be something that would be of interest? I mean, I know it would be kind of difficult at this depth.
The manganese oxide that we find on these rocks is, of course, of interest, but there are, just look at the seafloor. You know, this wouldn't be a place that people would be interested in trying to extract, especially rare earths, which are needed for our technology these days.
Because of the depth, because of the slope,
because of the
or because it's so scattered.
Paucity. There are so few, rocks here that it really wouldn't be economically feasible. But a couple of dives from now, we're going to be out on the Pacific Plate on some huge ancient volcanic features. And these guys have really thick crust of manganese. Manganese oxide crusts, cobalt crusts, contain a whole bunch of different transition metals and rare earths that are important for getting the elements that are needed for our technology today, and they're pretty lucrative.
So I know we've been talking a lot about what it is that we're seeing, and you know, what we're expecting. What we're seeing now is not at all what we expected. I'd like to ask Jeff Drazen. And I know you've already explained this, but we have some viewers who might just be joining us. If you could just explain again, give us an overview of this area and your thoughts about what you're seeing. This is just for some of our viewers who are just joining us.
Sorry, we were talking about some of the things that we were seeing. Can you repeat that question?
Yeah, I was just asking Jeff Drazen if he could, since we have some new viewers who just recently joined us, if he would mind just explaining, giving us an overview of this site and what it is that you're seeing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sure thing. So in general, the goal with doing a couple of these very deep dives was to sample what we call the abyssal hadal transition. So there's been a lot of work in these trenches. It's been focused on the very deepest places. There's been a bit of a focus there because of the sort of the engineering feat of getting to the deepest places, and there have been some biological inquiry trying to understand life under extreme pressures as well. There's also been work that's been conducted in the back arc and in other locations. It's been a bit shallower, maybe down to a few thousand meters, but it's left mostly the sides of the trenches between depths of say 8,000 and all the way up to about 5,000 meters relatively unstudied. And it turns out from limited sampling that's where a lot of the changes in the kinds of fauna that you observe occurs. That's why we call it the abyssal hadal transition, is that there's a shift between what we'd normally see on the abyssal plain between depths of 4,000 and 6,000 meters, and then moving into a community in the trench that seems to be much more endemic and specialized to those very great depths and high pressures. So we wanted to take this opportunity to explore this community in the Mariana Trench and we've picked a couple of different sites along the trench to see if there's a lot of change. So we had on the earlier leg of the expedition, we had a dive in the southern portion of the trench, and now we're able to dive here in the more northern portion.
Should get substantially steeper.
It turns out, as we have descended to the seafloor, almost immediately we noticed these big white chunks of rock that are carbonate, and those we strongly suspect come from
75%. You said 37 degrees.
coming out of the rock
75 degrees, 37%,
and tumbling down. And so now we are proceeding with all
rise
haste
of 30 meters, a run of 40
in the
meters.
hopes that we can actually find the source of these rocks and some really, really deep seeps, which could harbor whole communities of unusual organisms that take advantage of the chemicals coming out of the seafloor.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, but the thing is, you got to know what the layback is when we're sitting still. We're not going to be directly under the ship.
Yeah, we haven't sat still since, so I'm not sure. I don't have a good sense of that yet.
Well, so if we come up on a cliff, we just have to know how far we're going to move the ship back so we don't swing into it. That's why
This is Patty, your geology lead scientist, and I just wanted to let folks know that as the Pacific Plate is being subducted beneath the Mariana region, what happens is all of the fluids that are in the sediments and that are locked in minerals in the rocks that have been altered by exposure to seawater over time tend to get squeezed and distilled out by increasing pressure and temperature. And those are the fluids that are rising up through the overlying mantle and crust of the Mariana region. So the whole area between the volcanoes of the Marianas and the trench axis is about 200 kilometers wide. This whole area has been fractured, broken up by faults over the past 50 million years or so. These fault traces are the routes up which the fluids move. As earthquakes occur, the rocks grind against one another and break up along the fault traces, so the fluids that are rising up those faults kind of create a mush of mixed little ground up pieces of rock and fluid, so it actually makes a mud, and the mud is less dense because it has become fluidized and rises relative to the rocks around it, so it'll squirt up usually where a couple of faults intersect and create a conduit.
So that rock looks a little bit different.
This rock that we're looking at is probably a piece of the mantle, the dark rock. The white rock down to the left of it is a piece of carbonate that's forming at a chimney that probably grew at a seep on the seafloor where these fluids are coming out. Sometimes these chimneys get 30 meters high. I mean, they can look like almost anything. Some of them look like saguaro cacti. Some of them look like if you've ever made a drip castle on the beach when you were a kid, pick up wet sand and just let the sand drip down off your fingers to make a little spire. Some of them actually look like that. It's phenomenal. Some of them look like kind of the ones that grow along a fissure will look like gravestones. And the first ones we ever saw, in fact, the first carbonate chimneys ever discovered on the seafloor back in 1987 were on one of these mud volcanoes that I was diving on with the Alvins, and we called it the graveyard.
Oh, okay.
That's exactly what it looked like.
Okay.
And then a few years later, the Lost City carbonate chimneys were found on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge in an area where mantle rock is exposed at the seafloor on a spreading ridge where new seafloor is forming in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, cracks or faults in the seafloor where offsets occur. The mid-ocean ridges expose the mantle of the Earth, and then when seawater interacts with the rocks there, you also get carbonate materials forming in chimneys. The chimney structures there can also be incredibly huge and of amazing different kinds of shapes. So fingers crossed, everybody out there. If you believe in chimneys, clap your hands. Do you remember Peter Pan? I believe in fairies.
So our shore-based team and viewers, I think one of the cameras you can switch over and you can see a really great view of D2, the Deep Discoverer ROV, and that image is being taken by another ROV that's just above it called Sirius. And that line that you see coming from the tail end of Deep Discoverer is actually a tether that's going up to Sirius. And Sirius has another tether that's coming up to the ship.
Right here real quick.
We are on America's ship for ocean exploration.
And discovery.
Yep. The Okeanos Explorer. We are diving in the Mariana Trench, which is so totally super exciting for us. It's going to the trench has been on my bucket list for a long time, so I'm super excited about being able to observe this in real time, to explore and discover new things in real time. We have two scientists. We actually have several scientists on board, functioning in different roles. But Patty Fryer from the University of Hawaii and I, Shirley Pomponi from Harbor Branch Oceanographic Institute and Florida Atlantic University, are your two science leads. I'm the biologist, and Patty is the geologist. And one of the really cool things about the way we're exploring is that we have a team of shore-based scientists, biologists, geologists, microbiologists. We have resource managers participating. And so, I mean, my area of expertise is sponges. And so I'm frequently phoning a friend or typing into the chat room, hey, what's that? And we've got, so a lot of the stuff that I'm describing is information that's being provided to me on our chat room by our teammates on shore. One of the things that if you were online for our earlier introductions, Bill Clancy from the Institute for Human and Machine Cognition as part of the State University System of Florida, Bill is joining our team really to get some information about how we scientists are communicating to each other, and learning about how to explore using telepresence. So he's at the Exploration Command Center at the University of Hawaii. We're out here on the ship. We've got folks participating from many other exploration command centers across the U.S. and even in Guam.
And right now we're looking at a transition from very smooth sediment that we just have been going over into a bit coarser material. And there was a comment from shore, and I've been noticing this too, that there is pretty smooth sediment, and where you see the really fine stuff that has the ripples in it, a lot of the seafloor in the oceans is just fraught with trails from organisms that have moved across that surface grazing for animals, but we're not seeing that.
Yeah, no, not seeing
they say in conjunction.
Right. So this really is a transitional zone where, there may not be that much life. What might be in the sediments here?
Golly. Well, I would guess there's lots of microbes down there.
Exactly. I would think so too.
Can't see them though. But it's really great that we're being able to make tracks up this slope, because we are hoping to see where all this material's coming from.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
The slope in front of us, I'm looking at the bathymetry map. That's basically the topography map, and it shows that the lines of equal depth, the contour lines, are getting much closer together. And so that means we are headed toward a steeper slope. And that's what, presumably somewhere up there, is the source of all this material that we're seeing that has fallen down and made kind of these little drapings of coarser pebble-sized material that we're looking at right now.
So you're getting when you were talking about the topographic map, you're looking at in the quad screen where we can see 4 different screens. This is the screen on the lower left. So
that's right.
Those of you at home can see this also.
Right. If you'll tune to the appropriate channel, you'll see 4 pictures. The upper right is the side scan sonar, and that's our sound source is sent out in front of the ROV. The one on the right is from the suspended Sirius vehicle, which
isn't that pretty?
Our little shrimp.
Oh my gosh.
That's a shrimp at 5,912 meters.
Wow.
Gracefully making its way.
Yeah. We've been getting a lot of feedback from participants on shore, friends and family as well, who've been really excited to take a look at this quad screen, the split screen, because they can see pretty much what we're seeing as well. They know how deep we are. In this case, they can see the sonar.
And the shrimp.
And the shrimp. Wow, that's really nice with a black background, too. Really nice. Really nice.
Starting to lose you.
Alright, come on out, video.
Yeah.
Where'd I go off to your starboard?
Yep. I can turn if you want, but
No, I'll put it back. Okay, let's see where I am. Nice job, Tara.
Thanks. Nice follow.
Now there's a big chunk of carbonate, 2 big chunks of carbonates in there, the white stuff. And this is what we've been talking about as potential pieces of carbonate chimney. I just wonder where the source is.
Let's do a snap zoom in here. Thought I saw something move. Nope. Just not. Hey, come on up.
I'm all for looking.
Hey guys, so we saw some shrimp. It's Diva, by the way. We saw some shrimp similar to the one we just saw on leg 1. And we sent the pictures to Mary Wixton from Texas A&M, a crustacean expert. And she said that the rostrum and the furrows on the carapace indicate that it's a Penaeid shrimp. And the very short rostrum indicates that it's from the family Bentosissimidae. And she thought that perhaps it's from the genus Benthanectes, but the identification is uncertain because we need to see the ventral view of the genital apparatus to identify these shrimps with any certainty, and we weren't able to see that on leg 1. But perhaps from these images we've just seen, if we were to email them to her, she'd be able to give us a better ID. So, yeah, a little 2 cents about that.
Attention all hands. The ship's door is now open for the next 10 minutes. Come on down for a chance to win some free Red Bull or Monster and related discounts.
This is a piece, large pieces of chimney coming into view. And we're looking, if you take a look at the Sirius view, folks at home, you'll see the mounds or stripes on the seafloor are these channels and ridges of debris that are being moved downslope. I'm just so stunned by how much of this white carbonate is covering the seafloor, I think these things have probably grown in place. And if they haven't, if these have rolled down the hill, then there's some very, very large structures uphill from us that have generated them. It's possible that some of these places where we're seeing the white carbonate material have actually formed in place. Around the yellow area, you see kind of a little hole, and these are places where the fluid actually is seeping out of the ground to help form the chimney structures themselves. And this bit is a bit too big for the pilots to pick up. I would never have thought that we would see so much of this stuff right here. This is amazing.
I thought for sure we'd be seeing some sea cucumbers at the very least.
Yeah.
But none yet. We're in that transition zone. Or as what my colleague Amy Wright would say, the dead zone.
The dead zone. Right, there aren't very many animals here at all. Certainly nothing that is of the sort that attaches itself to the seafloor, but that is not too surprising because there's an awful lot of debris here, so I'm pretty sure there have been a lot of individual slumps of rubble that have come down the slope, and that would just knock anything off.
Deb Blixen, are you on the line?
Oh, wow.
Oh, my goodness. Oh my goodness. Holy smokes. Let's go over there. Oh, jeez. Look at that.
Calm down.
I can't.
Calm down.
Sorry, folks. I hope your ears aren't blown out. Wow.
Slow down to 0.1, Levi.
We'll actually skirt it, like the way we're going.
No, I agree. We're starting to see features.
Outcrop.
Yeah.
Outcrop.
Yeah.
Bridge over now.
Outcrop at 12 o'clock. Whoa, where's my pen?
Can we slow that move down to decimal 1 knots?
Oh, man.
Thank you, Bridge.
This very steep slope looks layered and jointed. Okay, layers are the horizontal boundaries between whatever this stuff is, and jointing represents fractures that occur in rock that are vertical or at some angle. Oh, wow, this is really cool.
If somebody is talking, I can't hear anything.
Go ahead, Bridge.
There's something sticking out of that hole.
So, Roland, I'm trying to send you a message on your private chat, but I can't find you in this list.
Thank you, Bridge.
There's something sticking out of that hole.
Man, it's really hard to tell what this stuff is. If as we zoom in, we see any orifices.
And a crab behind.
Is that a sponge hanging down?
There's some animal
yes. There. Oh, my God.
So he's got 30 meters left.
Oh, my God. I think that might be a carnivorous sponge.
Carnivorous?
Yeah, yep.
This is 5,898 meters.
That's full zoom.
We're actually pretty close to waypoint 2, pilots.
Wow.
Is that a crab just behind it?
Yeah, it looks like it might be.
I think we need to talk to the watch leaders, but I would think if this is as exciting as it sounds, they might want to stop.
Full zoom.
Bridge over now.
Yeah, is it possible for us to stop here for a bit and take a look at the biology? I would never have thought to find that here.
Come out wide.
Well, tell them to back up.
Can we zoom back in on that little crustacean or crab or whatever that was?
We should back up on reciprocal course.
We're going to try to do that.
Like 30 meters.
There's an awful lot of legs in there.
Yeah, we're going to try to get into position
Bridge,
to be able to stay here a little bit and look around at this incredible outcrop.
050, 30 meters.
3/10.
I wouldn't be surprised if this is the sort of thing that's breaking up and producing a lot of that material.
Reverse moving up to
but I'm just dying to see whether this pale colored material is
Let's pull up and see what the
can't possibly be all carbonate.
Come back to this watch lead.
Yeah, we'd love to come back to this.
We're just going to see what's above us.
Okay.
I'm looking straight down at you.
Roger, understood. Wow, looks like this outcropping goes way up the cliff.
Okay, if I look forward a little bit?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I know where I am.
Yeah, he is now.
Ship is going back.
Is 30 meters about right, you think?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, we still have all the layback, too.
Well, right. The question is how much layback. So we want to sort of go back a distance equal to the layback.
Man, I have never seen an outcrop like this on any dive I've ever been on around this area. And I've been in Shinkai 6500 down to 6500, almost 1 meter short. But nothing like this. If I had to guess, I would say that this is an outcropping of peridotite that has been serpentinized. In other words, it's been hydrated to serpentine.
I'm looking back at you slightly.
Yep. So I'm going to push ahead.
And I'm wondering if somewhere in the outcropping here there have to be some seeps that are producing the carbonate chimney structures, of which we saw pieces, fragments of them down lower on the flank of
So
this.
first do them down, right?
This slope.
On the uppers.
Okay, just stow.
Yep, stow and then up.
Is this the steep wall that we expected to encounter, or is this some other feature that we were not expecting?
No, I think this is the base of the steep wall we were expecting to encounter. And boy, did we encounter it with a bang. I was really amazed to see there's so many critters on it. We're at 5,878 meters, and in the southern part of the Mariana Trench, over by the Challenger Deep, some of my colleagues from Japan, along with some of my American colleagues who were on a cruise to 2009, I believe, they discovered a seep area in a region of exposures of mantle rocks that had very rich biological communities. But the area they were in was mostly covered with sediment, right, and did not show as much of what I think we're looking at here, which is serpentinized peridotite, serpentinized or hydrated mantle rock. Hydrated mantle rock, usually the rock is a dark greenish color, greenish black. But when it turns to serpentine, the serpentine itself is a much lighter color. Muds made out of serpentine are kind of a light bluish, maybe slightly greenish blue. And
sorry, you want me to come up more?
That's the characteristic color
You're still moving forward.
Yep.
Of the serpentine. So that's what I think we're looking at right now.
Ship's just about in position. Do you guys want more back, or?
It all depends on what our layback was. I can't say.
If you look at the Sirius view, you'll see just tons and tons of